Hello, we're here with Grandmaster Ben Finegold, the #1 player of the St. Louis Archbishops and the winner of the Game of the Week prize for Week 2. This is FM Mike Klein reporting for the US Chess League. Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Well, congratulations on your win. On your Facebook page, you called it one of your best games you've ever played. Why did you say that?
Well, I looked at the game with Houdini, and I assumed it was going to tell me all the better ways I could have played. But actually, there were several positions where the move that I actually played in the game was not listed as one of the top 3 moves for over a minute, and then all of a sudden Houdini realized my move was the best. So, not sure if "realize" is the right word. So the game was tactically pretty complicated and strategically quite weird. And those kind of games are ones where there's a lot of mistakes. But, somehow I figured out my way through the maze and played pretty well. So I was pretty happy with that.
Now, it took Houdini to 1 minute to find the move that you found. Did you find it faster than 1 minute?
I don't know. There were several positions where I thought quite a long time, and I wasn't sure what the right move was. And when I made a conclusion, what I thought the right move was, even when I won and the game ended and I was pretty happy with it, that's usually when Houdini gives me the smackdown and tells me, no, you could have played better and your moves are ridiculous and all that. But that wasn't the case here. So.
Now, one of the Game of the Week judges found that you played Gelfand in '89. You beat him in 25 moves in a Nimzo. And I believe later on in New in Chess, you called that your best game ever. Will this game replace that game? I know beating Gelfand is sort of a special accomplishment in and of itself.
Yeah, Victor's pretty funny. That was Victor's shown, I think. Yeah, I've shown Victor that game. In fact, after my game, I was thinking, hey, this game's 25 moves also just like the Gelfand game. Okay, I mean, beating Gelfand is a little more impressive, although I guess Gelfand wasn't Gelfand when I beat him. Well, he was close.
His mother still thought he was.
That's correct. In fact, my mother's maiden name is Helfand, and so he calls me his brother. So, no, I mean, the game with Gelfand was, I guess, more impressive just because it was, a live game and rated, and during a tournament when Gelfand was 4-0. This is right up there considering the way I've been playing the last few years or so. This game was especially good considering I got crushed the last week, and my opponent in week 1, Julio Becerra, almost won Game of the Week the week before. So it's a good turnaround for me.
Right, and for those listeners that are interested in seeing the nice crush, it was '89 at the Oive Memorial, and it was a very, very great attack. I believe you played Queen F4 check to finish things off, and
Queen F5 check.
F5 check. Okay. Were you surprised that GM Nicholas Huschenbeth allowed the move 10 Knight G5?
Well, first of all, I was surprised on move 2, which, I get surprised so often in the opening now that I try to make it less of a surprise. But I didn't know Nicholas before the game because I guess he just moved to the U.S. recently and I don't see any games playing in USCF-rated tournaments. And when I looked at my database, every single game without exception was a King's Indian. So E6 on move 2 was quite surprising. And I decided I was going to play a line that's somewhat rare since he doesn't have any experience as far as I could tell in the Nimzo Indian. So I actually wasn't that surprised that he played B6 because B6 is a natural-looking move, and Knight G5 I think gives White a nice advantage. And I think if Black just plays Knight on C to E4 instead of B6, then he's pretty much equalized. But, if you play one opening your whole life and then you start playing other stuff to confuse your opponent, usually you don't know the ins and outs as well, and I think that's what happened this game.
Right, I believe both you and Grandmaster Yermolinsky pointed out that he had to play Rook E8, which is a weird move to play when you're allowing Queen takes H7. Would you have taken the pawn sacrifice if he'd played Rook E8?
No, actually, I faced Rook E8 before, and that game is not in a database. It was in an open tournament in Ohio against Calvin Blocker, international master from Cleveland, and I won a wild and crazy game, which is very, very confusing game, actually. And he did play Rook E8, and I don't recollect actually what move I did play, but I did not take on F6 and take on H7 because I thought it was too dangerous. But I was aware of that move before the game, and I think Rook E8 is the best move.
Now, it sounds like with your post-game Houdini review that after 10 G6, you're basically just winning. Is that a fair thing to say?
I don't know winning. I think I played well, and maybe in one or two places he could have improved. but I think it's at least a clear advantage. And maybe some other grandmasters would say White's winning just because of the dark square weaknesses. But maybe Black can defend a little better, but it's almost impossible. It's game in 75, and he doesn't have a dark squared bishop, so it's a terrible defense for Black. So it's close to winning.
Right, the dark squared bishop was the key piece in many matches this past week. Let's talk about the archbishops. You guys had a great win. You led your team to 4-0 this week, but you've got a much different team than last year. You've gone from three GMs to two, and now you're the lone GM. And in addition, three of your top four boards are gone from last year. Are you going to enjoy the challenge of playing board one every time that you play this year?
Well, last year I was the de facto board one because Nakamura only played one match. In fact, if you go to the U.S. Chess League and look at my stats, it said I played board one last year, which was not really the case. I was the board two, but since I played board one so often, they must have thought I was board one. So I'm used to playing board one because Hikaru is always playing in category 22 tournaments and winning them, so he's not playing so much in the U.S. Chess League anymore. I am looking forward to playing board one. I had a very good result last year. I didn't lose any games, and I won several. And I thought I had some Game of the Week candidates last year, but it wasn't to pass. So at least something good happened this year, even though I lost game one. I'm expecting to play a lot of Grandmasters every match, and I'm playing Vinay Bhat tomorrow, so that'll be another test.
Now, you were picked to finish last by IM David Pruce in his preseason rankings. Are you aware of those rankings?
Well, not only am I aware, but he said some other stuff. He said that we weren't even trying this year, which is pretty insulting. We have, some of the top players from Lindenwood, Priyadarshyan, Brigadzhi. Anna Sharevich is starting Lindenwood in a couple weeks, and she'll be on the team. Carla Serrano-Heredia is playing. So we have some WIMs, WGMs, and IMs from Lindenwood, and our board three and board four is I think better than last year in some cases because we're going to be outrating our opponents, especially on board three. And if I can do okay on board one, I think we will have a good season. So we're going to find out, I think, tomorrow when we play San Francisco. That's another tough opponent. But, I was distraught after seeing us being written off just because we lost match one and because we don't have as many Grandmasters. But as you know, Mike, usually the teams that win the U.S. Chess League don't have a lineup of all GMs. They're just really solid on all four boards.
That is true. Now, I know you got a long season ahead in 2012, but looking ahead to 2013, is there any chance you'll also pilfer some players from Webster, maybe a Ray Robson or a Wesley So?
I wouldn't be surprised. We actually tried to get some of the players this year, but I think it was a little too late in the game because the season started basically when they were starting school. So I think now that we have more time to maybe get one or two more GMs, we'll probably have a slightly different team next year. But as you know, the chess club is working with Lindenwood, and so we want to get as many Lindenwood players as possible. And as you can see, the Lindenwood players this year thus far have been on fire. Priyadarshyan 2-0, Brigadzhi won his game, only game he played. So those players from Lindenwood are doing quite well. And as you know, the problem with having players like So and Meyer and Robson is our board four is going to probably be, somebody quite low rated. So sometimes having a balanced team works out better.
That's true, and one more player to add to the list, as you said before, is WGM Anna Sharevich, who I believe had a pretty successful Olympiad playing for Belarus. So while she's a USCL newcomer, she'll be a good addition also. How does it work week to week with preparation? You being clearly the highest rated player on the team, do you help any of your lower boards prepare each week?
Normally, we get to the match a couple of hours early. We have a team dinner. And the last couple of weeks, now that I guess this will segue into the next kind of questions, now that we have Yasser Sarawan as the GM in residence, he's actually been helping the team prepare beforehand. So an even higher rated player than myself is helping the players prepare. And I don't like to prepare right before the game, but I like to watch the preparation and see what openings they're looking at. So I think preparation's gone pretty well so far.
Yeah, Sarawan's always been very generous with his time, so I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Your game just barely edged out FM Casa Corley's win over GM Mikhail Kekalidze. Were you surprised that you beat out that game, or do you think it was just your time? After all, you said you played a lot of good games last year.
I'm not surprised that I won over that game. That game had two interesting points. One was the interesting move King E5, and also the fact that it was a back and forth game. And the other thing interesting was the fact that Black won in an upset. Usually, lower rated player with the black pieces beating a higher rated player is always a reasonable choice for game of the week. But probably technically, my game was a slightly higher level. But that game certainly, I played it over more than once. It was baffling, and somehow Black made a huge comeback. And I mean, that was a really interesting game. That could have also won. And I think the fan favorite was that game for sure.
Yeah, what do you think are the best features to go into deciding what makes game of the week? I mean, like you said, your game and Corley's game were completely different as far as who played better start to finish versus the excitement of the king walking to e5. So, what's the best criteria for game of the week?
Well, I think there's two criteria, and of course, there's five judges. I believe they have their own criteria. For me, it's probably a tie for first between both sides playing pretty well. Not too many blunders or mistakes or really obvious bad moves, and exciting for the spectators. And that's why the Corley game with Black moving his king up the board and somehow getting an attack on White's pieces. That's quite interesting for spectators, especially when the people are on the edge of their seats. They don't know who's going to win the game. I think those are good choices for game of the week.
Now, recently you left your position as the GM in residence at the St. Louis Chess Club. What are your plans now, and do you plan to stay in St. Louis for a while?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. I do plan to stay in St. Louis. I've been asked that question quite often, as you can imagine. And I love St. Louis. I love the area I live in. I actually live right behind the chess club here in the Central West End, which, as you know, is a great neighborhood. And I like my apartment. I like going to the chess club still, and I have a lot of friends here, so I'm going to stay here. To answer your first question, I'm going to be playing more tournaments. I played in a tournament in Minnesota a couple weeks ago, and that was my first time actually playing chess in Minnesota in 30 years. The last time I played was in the 1982 U.S. Open, which was in St. Paul. And this time I played in a suburb of Minneapolis, Plymouth, and that was a nice tournament. And I'm going to be playing next month in the Spice Cup Open here in St. Louis. I'll be playing in the Michigan International in November. And other than playing more often, I'm also going to be coaching more. I'm going to Slovenia for the World Youth Chess Championship in November. There'll be a lot of American coaches there and a lot of American kids playing also. I think we're going to have over 70 kids and over 10 coaches. So hopefully we can bring back a lot of medals. And, well, I'm playing in the USChessLeague. So I'll be playing more chess, coaching more, teaching more. And it'll be interesting as I'll probably be doing more traveling as well.
Yeah, sounds like a busy schedule. Have you ever counted how many states or how many countries you've played tournaments in?
Yeah, I think unlike most stronger chess players, I've played in relatively few countries. I believe I've played chess in 10 countries, and I've never counted the states, although I have thought about it. And I've probably played chess in between 25 and 30 states. But again, I think for a lot of grandmasters, my numbers are actually smaller than most.
Well, you've lived and played in a lot more places than most. If some amateur player wanted to go to, say, Europe to play in a tournament, what city would you advise him to go to, or what tournament specifically?
Well, my favorite city in Europe is probably Amsterdam. I love walking around. The people are great. The shops are great. It's just the canals, and I really like Amsterdam. As some of you know who are listening, I lived in Belgium for 4 years, from 1988 to 1992. And I guess my one regret is I never played in open tournaments in Spain because everybody says how wonderful Spain is and how great the tournaments are. If I had to recommend one tournament, that's interesting because probably the tournaments I played in either don't exist anymore or they're round robins. But I guess my favorite tournament when I lived in Europe was Vikonsay, and I actually was able to play two or three times in the B group actually, which is surprising now because I think the B group is like category 17 or 18 now. But when I played, it was category 10 or 11, so I got a chance to play in those events.
Right, and for those that like cold weather in February, that'd be a great place to go. Um, Now, you seem to be very good at commentary. I mean, you have some great anecdotes. You have a great memory for past games players have played, and a lot more tournaments around the world, say a London Chess Classic or a Gibraltar or an Iceland, are having live commentary. Is there any chance you might, become sort of a doing the commentary circuit around the world?
Well, actually, that's a good question. I've been asked recently by chess.com to do not only make videos, which is another thing I'm going to be doing with my time, but also to do live commentary. And Danny Wrench and I did live commentary, I think, for round 9 of the Olympiad in Istanbul, and that was actually my birthday, and that was the day that the U.S. beat Russia. So that was a very interesting day to do my first commentary. And probably, if I don't get invited to the U.S. Championship, which I probably won't, there's a good chance I'll do commentary with Jennifer again. So I'm expecting to do more commentary, but as you said, if I can get hired to do commentary for these Super GM tournaments, then sounds good to me.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot of opportunities for your chess fans to see you between your tournaments and your coaching and your commentary and your USCL matches. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more from you in the future. Thanks very much for your time, Ben.
Thanks, Mike.
And we want to thank our USCL sponsors, PokerStars, Chess.com, and the ICC.